welcome back to my studio. It's lovely to have you here. It's a beautiful May day again, and everything in the garden is so lush and green, and it just feels like everything is starting to open out really and truly and expand. And they're incredible how much growth there is in a very short space of time. I will have to get my scythe out. Those of you who've been around for a while might know that I've got a scythe that I bought last year. My husband bought for me last year because he already had one. And a scythe is the most brilliant thing for cutting back, herbage and grass and stuff that you don't want. What people would call weeds, but it means we can clear ground and keep things, I was going to say in order, but not really. It just keeps the chaos a little bit at bay. So we have the geese. The geese eat some of the grass. And actually the chickens eat all sorts of things. They eat all kinds of, I saw one eating buttercup leaves the other day, and the geese are brilliant because they eat dandelion heads, so you get fewer dandelions. And I love dandelions, but they could run the place over if we're not careful. But the geese absolutely adore eating them, and they also love the cleavers, or the, what do we call it, sticky willy, goosegrass. Funnily enough, it's called goosegrass, isn't it? What a great name for something that geese love to eat. If I go to them with a little bit of this in my hands, that they're just about to take my hands off if I'm feeding it to them. So that's all going on outside, and inside I've been obviously working on my piece. I've had a lovely weekend with my sister. We've been doing, it's really weird, but we're having such a nice time because we're clearing out my dad's house after Dad finally passed away. It's been something you would think would be an awful job to do, and it has been very daunting, and undoubtedly there is a lot to do. But because we're doing it together with her family, and we're getting together and we're spending time with each other, it's been an absolute joy. We'll have such a laugh because we're, when you've grown up in a house, we actually, I think my dad's lived in this house since we were teenagers, and it's full of memories, full of happy memories of family parties and children and grandchildren and all sorts of really lovely things. So we've just been hanging out together, and we've been to the tip several times with all sorts of rubbish that really isn't of use to anybody, and we're clearing out stuff for charity shops. We've got things to sell. It's a mammoth task, but because I'm going over regularly, because that's in the northeast of England, which is where I'm from originally. If anybody wants to know, I'm from Sunderland in the northeast, but my parents lived in Northumberland, which is a very beautiful county, a bit like Cumbria. It's a really lovely county to live in. And so that's what I've been doing at the weekend, and then I come back here and I get on with my sewing, and it's just a really nice sort of thing to do, spending time with your family. Isn't that lovely? Especially with everything that's gone on over the last few years. That's just been an absolute joy. So I am so grateful to you all for being here. Thank you so much for all your subscriptions, for your comments. If you leave me a thumbs up if you enjoy the video, that all helps to grow my channel, and that means we reach more people, more kindred spirits, more people who want to play around with fabric and stitch and thread, and just play around with creating art in whatever form that might be. Any interaction with you is wonderful. It's what makes my day. A little chat with somebody just is brilliant, because I do live in a very quiet corner of Cumbria, and there's a whole world out there, I know, and it's just wonderful to be connecting with you like this. So let's go across to my table and we'll have a little look and see where we've got to with this piece and what's going to be next. So this is me. I'm still sewing and sewing and sewing. It's so nice. It's almost like I don't want to stop sewing, because you could just go on and on and on and making it all just completely stitched. It's quite addictive. It's so meditative. I just love doing it. And you just go round and round and round, and it gets sort of more and more interesting, better and better. I've got some green to do here. I'm going to do that next, and I'm going to finish off this yellow in a minute. I've just been doing these little edges here, and I think it's beginning to look really cool. I'm amazed at how tidy I've got these edges. It's quite remarkable for me, because I'm usually pretty slapdash with my edges and stuff. Yeah, so we'll get on. Okay, so here we are. I think I have pretty much finished the stitching. I've tried to make sure that each area has got an even amount of stitching so that all the fabrics are pulled in the same amount, and that should help to keep it as square as possible, because you need to do that, otherwise if you do it loosely in one bit and tight in another you'll get differences. So I have to keep your tension even going across it, which is what I've tried to do. I've had a lovely time stitching all of this, it's been brilliant. And now I think the next thing to do is to attend to the edges. So I'm going to trim back this stabiliser. I'll do a bit of trimming back of this all the way around. I'm cutting it basically to the edge of the interlining fabric, which I think has stayed pretty steady. And then, oops. So then what I'll simply do is do some pinning like this, and it'll be rather nice because this will be the finishing touches, if you like, to create a nice coherent piece, and it's really going to make the central portion just really kind of stand out. If I neaten these edges up, it'll really neaten these edges up, and I'll just kind of frame it all like this. Oops. Some of these pins are not quite as sharp as they could be, so, but there we go. So I'm going to pin it all the way around, and then I'm going to stitch these edges tidily and have another look at it and see whether it needs anything else doing to it. I was so pleased to have all your comments last time, because it was really interesting to see what people saw in it. To see this kind of, I think it's definitely like a warrior there really, and a dragon over here. But it's also can be a map or an atlas. It's got a yellow river running down through it. Or somebody suggested that it was very much floral things, rhododendrons and natural nature objects, nature sort of colours. And I just think this is the lovely thing, because it's kind of abstract, for want of a better word, I'll call it abstract, because it's just shapes which doesn't appear to have a known form. It means we can make of it what we want. It's like having a piece of plasticine and you just mould it into whatever you want it to be. And I've kind of done this with this, but it's all just going to come around by its own natural process. And I'm fascinated. I've got these incredible edges, as I keep saying. I'm quite kind of just a bit stunned by them. So I'm going to, anyway, as I say, I'm going to pin these edges now and we'll get those stitched up. Yeah, so I'm just going to, as I say, trim these edges up. This stabiliser is lovely because you can really just put your scissors on it and run the points of the scissors up, and it just tears very nicely. Obviously, if you had the stitching all the way to the edge, if the stitching came right to the edge, you could just tear it really. But because I've allowed for me to do extra stitching on here, I haven't over stitched it. I've allowed it because when I fold that back, when I fold that edge back, I need to be able to stitch it and it not to be, you know, over stitched or too much stitching. Anywhere where I've got a little bit of a tightness there, in that there's not very much to fold back, I think I'll probably just pop another piece of fabric underneath in between, and then that'll give me the enough to fold it back on itself. I love it when it gets to this stage. So I'm just going to move some stuff out of the way here. I've got things all over the place. So I love it when it gets to this stage and it becomes this entity. It becomes an absolute piece in its own right. Whatever else I do with it from here forward, it is very much, it's got this lovely sound because of all the stitching, and it's become this solid object, this thing. And I just love it when it gets to this stage. It's very satisfying. So I'm going to carry on with this, and then I'll turn all the edges in and get them pinned. It's a nice little job to do after all the stitching. It's such a lovely day outside. I've been out and done all my shopping, and I've been sorting things out in the house a bit. You know how things just pile up in corners when you're not looking, don't they? And if you're not careful, suddenly the whole place is in a tip. So I've tidied the kitchen a bit this morning, and I think this weekend is going to be some hoovering and dusting this weekend. I haven't done it for a while. I'm a bit of a slack Alice on the old housework front, and I'm sure you'll all understand that. I only do it when it gets bad enough to be seen, really. And then you can see the difference, can't you? If you leave it a little bit so that it actually gets really a bit what I call hacky, then you can see the difference when you run around with the hoover. I have tried doing it where you keep on top of it all the time, where you kind of go around, you know, every few days you'll go around with my little hoover, my little cordless hoover, but I don't know. Nobody seems to notice but me, so I think, well, why bother? Why not just leave it till it's really disgusting, and then everybody will see the difference. And that bit, this bit, I've actually stitched a bit too close to the edge there, so I'm going to have to unpick that a little bit so that I can get the tearaway to come off. Here we go. So, nearly there. I'm not going to be framing these, I don't think. I think these pieces are going to be backed and hung as a piece in their own right. I think that's where they're heading. So, right, I'm going to fudge a couple of edges, get it pinned and get it stitched. Okay, so this is the finished piece. I've no idea what people are going to think about it. I think it's quite an adventurous piece for me. It's incredibly simple, and actually when I'm standing here looking at it, I'm actually watching this obviously in the camera, and it really stands out, doesn't it? There are certain shapes that really stick out if you can see them, and if you're seeing other shapes to me, that's absolutely fine too. But it's quite dramatic, very, very simple, and it's been all about trusting the process and seeing where it was going to take me. That's an interesting thing, isn't it, in its own right? Yeah, so who knows where it's going to be hung. I'll show you a close-up, and then we'll have a chat about how I'm going to hang it as well. Okay, so here it is in all its finished glory. It's been an intriguing piece to make. Those of you who've watched from the beginning know that I started with little tiny pieces of fabric like this, just cut randomly and embellished down using my embellishing machine onto the background quite randomly, just allowing the fabrics, and this is what's come out, and it's just so fascinating. There's bits to finish. I'll have to trim there's odd bits of edges that need a bit of attention. I might get my heat gun out and just make sure there's no loose bits that are sticking out too much. It's quite tricky to get fabric to be really, really sort of smooth unless you're doing, I don't know, patchworking or putting it into a frame. So you're going to get, you know, your edges are going to be wobbly, but I love that. I really like that. So I'll show you the back, which is, again, oh, it's quite intriguing. It's almost like that is really coming down onto this. It's quite interesting there, what that's doing. But you can see all the stitching that I've done, and nothing is rocket science, is it? It's just simply squirrely, whirly, whirly, and a lot of patience, basically. and you can see the edges are as raggedy as anything. And they're actually quite wobbly, which I love, because the whole thing is that fabric moves. It's not a static thing. It moves and it grows, and it's an organic process, this whole thing. So I'm going to back it. I think I'm going to perhaps put on some a Vilene interlining type thing that I can iron on, and I'll have a slot in that which a rod will go through, just a very flat rod. I'll show you what I use. Just bear with a moment. Yes, those of you who are interested in this aspect of what I do and want to know for your own purposes, this is what I generally use. It's a flat piece of, I don't know what it's called, moulding or something, and I just get it at my local hardware store, and that'll go on the back like that, and it'll be hidden, and it'll have, I'll do a curtain ring as a hanging device on there as well, and so it'll have a bit of strength to hold it up on the wall, but it's just going to be very simple, and it's going to be allowed to be as flexible as it wants to be. So I am so grateful to you for being here, for sticking with me on this piece. It's been an intriguing one to do, completely different to my normal thing. Who knows why? But I'm just fascinated by it. The whole process has been intriguing, and I hope you've enjoyed it and it's brought you some inspiration. Nobody else has to do this thing like I'm doing it, but it might inspire you to perhaps do something that's an abstract. Let the fabrics just speak to you and play around until you get something that, you know, it might make a picture or it might not. It might just allow people to look at it and go, make up their own mind about what it is. So thank you again for being here. I will see you again in my studio next week, and we will wait and see what on earth is going to follow this piece. Bye for now. Ba 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 ba.